No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, hope you're all having a great week. I'm just out here checking out. I have been trying to grow loofah for the last couple of seasons without too much success. I mean, I've been able to get a bunch of little guys like this for sure. But check this out. I just noticed this the other day, right up underneath there. Look at that big loofah there. Or at least that's pretty big for my garden anyways. That thing is really nice. So hopefully I can get it cured right. But yeah, great success this year with the loofah. Hope you guys have been having success in your gardens. Let's get growing. All right, gardeners, welcome to Let's Get Growing, your weekly gardening live cast right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch, I'm your host, and I'm really glad to have all of you along with me here for this week's show. I hope all of your gardens are growing along really well, or at least have grown on as well as we're into fall right now. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking a little bit about today with our special guest this week, Gardener Scott from the Gardener Scott channel there. It's going to be great to have a conversation with him again. He's going to be our very first return guest here on this show, and I'm really excited. I'm really glad to have him back again, one of my favorite gardeners on YouTube. We're going to have a fun little conversation about all things growing on here in just a little bit, so be sure to stay tuned. Now, if you are here with us today, be sure to click that like button, hit the thumbs up, give us a big like for this show, a big like for our guest gardener, Scott. And if you haven't yet subscribe to the channel. And also share with all of your garden friends. Let them know about the Let's Get Growing show here on Saturday mornings, where we have lots of fun talking about gardening and all sorts of things that are growing on in our gardens with all of our great guests that we have here each and every week. Also, you can check us out at letsgetgrowing.live. And if you are here joining with us right now and you have any questions, comments, or anything like that, get into our comment section there. Be sure to ask some questions. We'll be looking for some questions that we can jump in and ask Gardener Scott while he's here. Or if you have any questions for me in my garden, anything like that, just get in there, jump in there, ask some questions, and we'll be sure to try to get to those as we're going along with the show. Now, if you are here right now watching our replay, I'd love to give you a big thanks too as well, because I know a lot of you can't necessarily come and join with us live, so you watch our show on the replay, and I want to make sure I thank all of you as well for tuning in each and every week. And if you do have any comments or questions or anything at all, get down in the comment section below and let me know. I'd love to hear from all of you. And one last thing real quick here. One great way to support our show is also to support our sponsor. Our sponsor is Ivy Organics. You can check them out at ivyorganics.com and use our promo code GROW10, GROW10 in their shop. And check out all of their awesome gardening things that they have there for you to shop at their store. And yeah, so I hope you all have been having a really great week. It's really been kind of a strange week for us here weather-wise. We had a bunch of rain probably at the end of last week. It got really rainy. The night started to get a little bit cool. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, here we are again, too. It's been probably in the 80s now, probably for about the last at least 3 days or so. Bright sunshine in 80s. So here we are, like mid towards late October, and we're getting kind of this quick little last bit of summer for us right now. So it's been really kind of nice. It's been great to kind of take advantage of that time out in kind of this nice weather and make sure I'm getting some of my garden chores done, because again, it is kind of winding down from our summer garden season into fall, and there's a lot of work whether it's cleaning up, harvesting what's remaining out there. There's still some things growing. I've got tomatoes growing. I still got some cucumbers, beans, all sorts of things that I'm pulling out of the garden. But again, there's also a bunch of cleanup with some of that, some of those plants that have actually kind of run their course through the year. And then, of course, we've got some stuff that we're planting out and we're putting out to kind of grow through our fall season and in towards winter as well, too. So lots of really, really great things going on. In fact, one of the things we're also working on, too, over this next week or so, and just started yesterday too. So I got together with my friend Mike over at our other garden space that we have. It's his big giant front yard micro farm that we've been working on and trying to get developed over the last couple of seasons. But we just spent yesterday planting out all of our garlic bulb or cloves for our garlic harvest for next season. So that was kind of fun to kind of put those into the ground, because that's kind of like our first step towards next growing season. So really great to get those all started and all of that as well too. So it is a great time for everybody to be planting all of your garlic. So I hope if you are planning on growing garlic this next year that you're getting those cloves out into the ground as well too. And if you haven't had a chance to order any or get yourself any sort of different kinds, there's lots of different great varieties of garlic out there. But if you haven't had a chance to get that done and you're running kind of a little late and not going to be able to get it in before your first frost date, which, you want to get those in maybe a few weeks before that first frost date, just get down to your organic section of your one of your local supermarkets or something and grab some of that soft neck variety that you're more likely to find there, and pop some of that into the ground is there too, and that'll get you some good garlic for this next season as well too. So all right, so here real quick, we've got Rob with us, we got Jay in there. Gingerfoot Garden, thank you for joining with us today. Really great to have all of you along with us again here. One of the things I did want to kind of talk about today was over this last week, a couple of like really kind of cool world records were broken in the growing world this last week. In fact, right now is kind of the pumpkin way off time of season. All of these giant pumpkin growers have been putting all their effort, hard work it is to make sure that you're growing some of these just enormous gourds that these people are growing. And it's just amazing to see some of these. Hopefully here in a couple of weeks, though, we will have a really great guest with us who is one of these great giant growers. We're going to talk with her about her giant growing season and all of that. But this last week, we had the giant pumpkin record was broken, and it was broken by a teacher in Minnesota. Um, Grew this 2,749 pound pumpkin, and it broke the world record there. I think I'm not sure. I think it was maybe 50 pounds or something like that it was broken by. But yeah, that's just amazing. Just a huge pumpkin. So again, too, we'll be talking a lot more about some of those giant pumpkins again here also again in a couple of weeks too, as we're going to have a great guest with us on the show, Cindy Tobeck. She grows a lot of really great big giant pumpkins, and she's a teacher as well too. So it's gonna be great to have a great conversation with her talking about all of that. And the other record that was broken this week, and this is kind of one of those ones I started growing again maybe 12 13 years ago with a cucumber, but shortly after like starting my whole gardening adventure, I started growing my first peppers, and after my first couple of seasons of growing peppers, I mean, they became one of my favorite things, just one of my favorite things to grow. The variety, the plants, all of that sort of stuff, sweet, hot, all those sort of things, and I just love growing peppers. So just a wide variety of pepper varieties in my garden each and every year. I love it. And I also kind of follow along with a lot of the pepper growing community that's out there. And so everybody's been really, really excited about this picture that showed up a few days ago online of a pepper grower. His name is Smokin' Ed Curry. And Ed accepted his new, and mind you, this is a new record for him from Guinness Book of World Records for his new pepper called the Pepper X. Check this out. This is a nice mustard variety of pepper, and it is supposed to be somewhere around 2,600,000 Scoville units. Now that is extremely, extremely hot. In fact, I think the Carolina Reaper, which was Smokin' Ed's first record that he broke many, many years back with the Carolina Reaper, I think that one was around 1.6 million Scoville heat units. Now, now one of the things about growing peppers in a pepper community, there's people who are out there, and it's really kind of, it really is kind of a competition for a lot of pepper growers out there who are really trying to develop and create their own different varieties of peppers, and especially these really, really hot ones. So there's a lot of people out there trying to grow the hottest pepper in the world. And last year, I kind of got into a contest that shall not be named, but yet one of the categories was growing the hottest pepper in the categories. And I knew that all of the competition that I was facing was going to go straight for the Carolina Reaper because it was listed as the world's hottest pepper. Now, it being listed by Guinness Book of World Records and actually being the hottest pepper might be kind of two different things. Maybe not at first. Like right now, Smokin' Ed's definitely got the record. I don't know if there's really anybody who's reached that level yet. I know that there was another one, I think it was called Death Spiral or Dragon. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But there was another one too, Dragon's Breath, maybe. But it was supposed to be ranking around 2.4 million over these last couple of years. I reached out and I talked to a bunch of different people who actually eat these a lot. Like one of my friends, Johnny Scoville. I reached out to him and I asked him about what pepper I should grow. What does he think the hottest pepper was? And at the time, he suggested the chocolate primatali. So that's the one I grew because I wanted, I knew that, people are always developing these peppers. So there had to have been, after 10 years that this Carolina Reaper had been holding the record, that there had to have been a newer one that had a better heat level to it so I could win that category. Never did get a chance to get that tested to find out, but that's kind of the point though too, is that there are a lot of people out there who are really kind of, they claim, especially based on tasting and eating, one's hotter than the other, that sort of thing. But one of the things really when it comes down to is getting these things tested and getting them consistently tested so that you're finding out a really good are these peppers staying consistent at their heat level. And basically what that is just basically stabilization of the pepper. Is it stabilized? Are you going to get consistent growth? Or the pod's going to be the same each and every year, and are you going to get that consistent heat level out of it? And that's tough. I mean, and it can be something that could be a little bit costly for pepper growers. So again, there could be hotter peppers out there. It just could be kind of little the cost of getting a pepper out there like that could be just a little bit too much for some backyard gardeners to get done and do. So again, I can understand just a little bit what goes on in the background of all of these competitive pepper growers out there. But when Smokin' Ed announced his new Pepper X and all of that, I mean, it's just really, bunches and bunches of congratulations, especially right here at the Let's Get Growing show, to him for being able to do that. But then also a bunch of people who are kind of a little critical, going, there might be other ones that are actually hotter out there. And then also what it takes to get those peppers out there if they are really hot in order to get a Guinness Book of World Records. Now, mind you, the Guinness Book of World Records is a big brand, it's a big business, and there's a lot of things that people don't understand about how it does a lot of its things it does. So Smoking Eggs had to grow this for years and years and years, thousands and thousands of plants, massive amount of effort in order to make sure that he's stabilized his pepper, and then he's got to test it over and over and over again to know that he's got the right ones to submit to the Guinness Book of World Records. Then Guinness does their own testing and all of that, and then the records are done. But it costs quite a bit. And then for reference too, I think there's things like a lot of people don't think about too, is that like if you're watching like the Oscars for like movies and all of that, right? All these actors, everyone who's been nominated for each category, these people pay, and they have teams of people who actually put up a lot of effort, a lot of money, and all of that in order to make sure that they are kind of getting their name out there, in order to make sure that that they can get the votes that it's going to take in order to win and all that. So there's a lot of behind the scenes kind of efforts that go along with some of these sort of things. In fact, and I know I read this about when I was reading up on Guinness Book of World Records. It's the same thing with like any other type of award show and all that. You see these nice awards and all of that. Well, all those people, they pay for those awards, the actual awards, those Oscar statues. Each of those actors probably pay a couple of grand, maybe even more, for those statues as well too. So there's costs that go into being able to do this that can make it a little bit prohibitive for some other gardeners to be able to do that sort of stuff. So I kind of understand some of the criticisms when it comes down to it, that I've been hearing a lot of in all of these different groups. But ultimately, when you're putting the effort in and you're putting the work in to do the sort of things that Smoking Ed has done over his last two records, all he really deserves is a great congratulations. And he's got one right here from the Let's Get Growing show. And I don't know. I mean, I hope to be able to get seeds someday. He's not actually going to release seeds for a while, which is understandable. But, I hope to get seeds someday and be able to grow this pepper myself. But I don't think you'll ever really catch me actually trying it out and testing it. I've gotten into some pretty hot peppers. I tasted one. I've never eaten the Carolina Reaper, but I did eat one that was probably rated around 1,000,000 Scovilles. One time I ate like a sliver, and it was it was quite a ride. It was quite a ride, because it doesn't matter if you eat a little sliver or if you eat the whole pod. I mean, once you get into those type of peppers, you are in for a ride for sure. Get those endorphins pumping and all of that too. But some people just really love it and really love to eat those and all of that. May not be for me, but I do love growing the plants. I'm a huge pepper grower, and really excited again too about this record, and also about possibly eventually getting to grow this pepper myself, and maybe even have one of my friends. When I grew that Primatali last season, I had a friend come over and we did a live stream, and he actually taste tested it for me. And I'll tell you one thing too, this is the one thing out of that whole thing, and you can go back and watch it on my channel, and I bet you can even see it on the video. When after he took a bite of that pepper, I have never seen tears fly out of someone's eyes like I have. I mean, they literally slammed against the table when he was there, but he was a great sport, and really enjoyed the whole thing. And he said it took a day or two for him to get over that, but that's just a ride I don't think I want to get back on again. All right. So lots of those things going on here. I hope all of you are having a really great growing week and everything. So we're going to be right back here in just a minute with our special guest, Gardner Scott. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
IV Organic brand products are innovative, organic, effective, and USA made products to help make this your best growing season. Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author, saving the world with the home garden. Ivy Organic brand products has a product for you. Whether you be an organic orchard or a backyard grower that's trying to do things right, Ivy Organics has a product for you. Ivy Organic all-purpose fertilizers are unlike most fertilizers on the market in the sense that it has all 6 plant macronutrients. These are nutrients that plants need in abundance. Most people are just focused, and most people have only been trained to focus on the NPK, but Ivy Organic brand fertilizers deliver all 6 plant macronutrients, which include your nitrogen for your greening and growth, phosphorus for flowers and fruit, and also in the summertime helps with the drought resistance of the plant. Potassium, important for root development, disease resistance, and then the other 3 macronutrients that Ivy Organic all-purpose fertilizers have include magnesium, which is the heart of the chlorophyll molecule, sulfur, important for the greening and the metabolic processes within the plant, and number 6, and actually about 1/3 of the plant's weight, is calcium.
All right, all right. This week's featured guest is our first return guest here on the show. I'm really excited to talk with him again. Just literally one of my favorite gardeners. And if there's anything I really ever need to know about in the garden, or I need to figure out something, I'm going to Gardener Scott's channel. I'm going to go check out some of his videos and look up the different things. I mean, almost any question you have, he's probably got a video for it. And I really encourage you all to go and check his channel out as well too. Let's all welcome our friend Gardener Scott.
Hi,
Hey Scott, how are you doing?
I'm great. Great to be back on the show.
Yes, it's really awesome to have you back on here with us again this week, and and back again on the show too. First return guest.
That's fantastic. I feel honored.
Yes, that's great and awesome, and I'm so glad that you actually did, because I wanted to have you back on here too as well, in order to kind of wind up our season. You know, you were one of our first guests on the show as we got started here earlier this year, and we all got all of our seed. We were just kind of anticipating what's about to get growing in our gardens and looking forward to the whole year, and here we are, kind of really pushing into fall right now, and our seasons are kind of, as far as our summer growing season and all that sort of stuff, are kind of winding down a little bit. We're moving towards some fall growing and all of that, so I thought it'd be a great time to catch up with you and see how things have been growing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can look back over the season. I mean, it's hard to believe that, at least for some of us, the season is just downright over. You were talking earlier about some of the things that are still growing in your garden, but
Yeah,
my outside garden is completely done for now. And shout out to Tony and Jay and Rob,
yes.
Shandy's Gardens. Great,
Thank
great
you,
to
Scott.
see the people that are already on watching us together again.
Yes, awesome. Yes. Oh, cool. Yes, there we go. I see Tony's in here with us too. Shandy's Garden. Awesome. Again, too, it's one of the things I really love about this show, is just to be able to have a really great conversation with all of these great gardeners, and as well too, have a spot for everybody can kind of hang out like you do on your show as well too, for your live streams, and talk with each other as well as ask questions and all of that. So if you do have any questions, please let us know. In fact, I think I see one right off the bat here, Scott. Let's jump into this, because I was just about to mention this when you were talking about your garden. Where is Scott located?
I'm in Colorado, so a little east of Colorado Springs at 7,000 feet elevation. And in the background behind me is my garden, pretty much at the peak of the season a few weeks back, as the flowers and the greenery are happening. But now in Colorado, we've had some pretty cold days, and so the green and the flowers are already fading.
Yeah, that's that's the thing. You go, especially like you're kind of, like you said, you're a little up higher there in Colorado, so yeah, that stuff kind of hits you really quick too, I'm sure. Just like you probably turn around, you got things going, you're harvesting, and I bet you turn around and all of a sudden it's like, what happened to everything?
Yeah, it's a big roller coaster this time of year, because being in the Rocky Mountains, it'll be hot, it'll be hot, and then literally overnight it's cold. And what's so difficult for me growing is then it's hot again. So about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, we had a frost. It hit freezing. And then we started setting record high temperatures again. And then last week we had a hard freeze. It got down to 25 Fahrenheit. And then it got hot again. So yesterday was 80 degrees Fahrenheit, set a new heat record. And
Wow.
so it's just ups and downs that won't stop. But the problem is, it's those cold days that really put an end to everything, even as hot as it gets during the day.
Yeah, yeah. It just takes a night or two of some really temperatures dipping down, and a lot of those summer plants are just going to be like, all right, I'm done for. I don't care what's in the forecast. I'm just done. But yeah, yeah. So again, you've been getting a little bit of that kind of that warm system's kind of been running through your area as well too, because I'm like, man, it's just I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, it was rainy. We had some kind of cool, cold nights. We haven't dipped anywhere really down into the 30s or anything like that. I might have gotten mid 40s or something in my overnights, but that's still pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
But and it was rainy, and I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. I'm looking at what you're looking at there, and I'm like, okay, everything's going to start winding down. And a couple of days later, it's bright sunshine, 80s. I think it was like 84, 85 almost the other day. So we're like low mid 80s for the last few days. It's been really nice. It's great to have a little summer push, at the end of October. But again, when it comes to our gardens, it is that time where, those cold temperatures are going to really start taking a toll.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the warm days because it's easy to get outside. Tony's talking about stripping everything down and putting in
Yep.
the green manures. Yeah, I've been doing cover crops for a while now, and with this warm weather, it's easier to get out and pull out all those dead tomato plants and dead pepper plants and start putting the compost and the manure and the green manures and everything, getting the beds ready, getting the soil ready in fall. That's really a big push
Yeah.
of mine.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't done too much of like those cover crop type of things. I think that's something I'll probably try to experiment with a little bit more. I've got a lot of just kind of like smaller beds and different things that are just located all over the place. And one of the things for me I really look forward to as we're approaching winter is getting a lot of my leaves to drop off of my trees out front, because those leaves and the trees are what I really used to cover up all of those beds I'm not going to be using throughout that winter time. So I make sure I pack those on top and really make sure I'm protecting that top layer of soil, throughout the winter season. So that's one of the things. And again, like you said, the great weather, the great weather and all of that hasn't really been pushing very many leaves off my trees yet. So I hope I get it. So I'm sure it's going to happen, and I'm sure it's going to be fine. But again, too, like you said, getting out and being able to do some stuff, and that was that's been one of the great things. I've been like tons of stuff, pulling and getting things cleaned up, getting things ready for when all my leaves are ready to go and I can top everything off and all of that. But getting that working, because again, gardening may be fun, gardening may be all of that, but it can be a little bit of work. And we got to do some of that stuff and make sure it's done so that we can be, have some successful gardens.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not all fun and games. There is some work and stress involved, but that's what leads to the enjoyment when you can see what you accomplished. And we're late here because of the heat. Our leaves are late in changing color, and they're not falling yet either. They're normally starting to fall about this time of year. So I still have some leaves from last year. I make sure I always have bags of leaves ready to go. And so next year I'll be collecting this year. But you're right, just like you, they're not falling yet. So that's another chore to come.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Let's see. We got another. Oh, this question's for me. Shandy asks, Enoch, where are you located? I don't have it in my about section. I might have to fix that. I'm here in Southern Oregon myself, Medford in the Rogue Valley, Southern Oregon. So that's where I'm at and where I'm growing from. In fact, this will give you a chance to ask all of you out there. Why don't you put in the comment section as well too? Where are you growing from? And then I think Shandy asked one more question here real quick, and I'll throw this to you real quick, Scott. Can I put too much mulch over my garlic? I'm about to plant.
You can. And so in Cincinnati, a lot of it depends on how much rain and snow you get over the winter. So I typically put about 3 to 4 inches of straw over the garlic as a mulch, and I'll mix that straw typically with crushed dried leaves, just because it's so windy here, it blows away. But the leaves and the straw together tend to meld together a little bit better. But you can have too much, because with that rain and snow, if it holds that moisture on the ground and close to the plants before they're actively growing, you can get rot. Those cloves can rot in the ground if it's too wet for too long a period of time. And too much mulch doesn't allow the air circulation through the mulch, and the mulch will rot and the cloves will rot. And so a thick layer of mulch is good depending on how much your winter is going to throw at you. But it does need to have some airflow through the mulch so that it isn't excessively wet.
Yeah, because and this is a thing too. Like if you've got, and especially if you're like using a leaf mulch, I like your idea of putting straw and leaves together, because then you're really kind of like almost fluffing it in a way to keep them separated and to keep those things separated. But if anybody's ever dealt with like leaves or left them somewhere for a while, and after a few rains, it'll mat together. Those leaves will start matting together, and they'll basically just create like this really, almost like if you put a couple of layers of just straight cardboard flat onto your garden. So now if you imagine, if you just put something hard that's over the top of your garden, as those garlic are going to try to peek up, because you want them to peek up. You want them to kind of peek out a little bit and grow a little bit before that first frost, get a little bit of root development and everything before it starts going dormant. But once those things start popping up, and if they hit that, like if they hit a hard layer of leaves that have been matted together, those things are just going to curl down, and then they're not going to find their way up through the leaves. And at that point, like you said, they're going to start rotting, and all sorts of things are going to happen, and you're not going to necessarily get a good success. So that's one of the things and here's the thing I do. I literally, when it comes to my garden beds, because I really have only been using leaf mulch for most of my gardens. I like the idea. I might even try to do some straw. I think that's a pretty good idea as well. But for my garlic beds, I will wait until those things peek up out of the ground.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're cold hardy. They're going to handle things. They're going to be fine, into those first frosts and all of that, that sort of thing. So I'm going to wait until they maybe get a couple of inches up off of the ground, and then I'm going to spread my leaf mulch all around them, and make sure that each of those little plants are up there, and they can, just see the little tops out of the mulch and everything, and then we're perfectly fine, and we're ready, set to go.
Yeah.
All right. Here too. Now, on the subject of garlic, Tony asks, Scott, what varieties are you planting this year?
Well, this is a great question. So the answer is, I can answer some of the question, but I can't answer all the question. So a couple years ago, I was growing 15 different varieties of garlic, and I had them all in one raised bed, and I had nice rows lined up with, I was growing 2 rows of each type. So 30 rows with a plant tag identifying the 2 rows for each of those 15 types. And I was using little plastic tags, and I wrote all the information on it.
I think I know where this is going, Scott.
Well, and then not too much long after I started growing them, before there was any growth above the ground, had a terrible, terrible storm. It was an ice storm followed by a lot of wind, and it literally broke the tags, and then they blew away. So I can narrow down many of the plants I'm growing within those 15, and some are relatively unique, like music is a pretty unique kind of bulb. So I can narrow that down. But I was growing 3 or 4 different Russian purple varieties, and I can narrow it down to to a chestnut red, which is a red stripe variety of garlic, and the music. And so, what I did this year, because I don't know for sure which ones I'm growing from all those that I have saved, is that I went ahead and purchased some garlic that hopefully will be delivered today. That is inchlium red and music and at one of the purple stripes. I forget which one. So I'm growing a whole bunch of different varieties, and I don't know what they are, but at least those three I'm kind of starting over again. And I will label those with tags that aren't going to break and aren't going to blow away.
Nail them down.
Yeah. But music has always been one of my favorites.
Yes.
And so I think I may have mentioned that before, Tony, that I always like growing music. And so I wanted to make sure that I could clearly identify the music bulbs moving forward, in addition to a couple others that are kind of new that I'll be trying out.
Yeah. So yeah, music I've heard tons about, and I might even have heard it from you at some point as well too. So it's been one of those that I've been wanting to grow. I originally started it, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show too. And if you haven't had a chance to order, you can't get them in time, all that sort of stuff. If you want to have some garlic in your garden, just go to and I always go organic. It's just my preference. And I have grown non-organic before, and I haven't had any problem with any growth situations or anything like that. So you can get them from the store, you can grow them, but again, I prefer going to the organic section, and most likely you're going to find a soft neck variety of garlic. They store well, so most of the stores are going to carry those kinds. So I grew those for my first several years. I was growing just all these soft neck varieties that I was getting either locally here at the farmer's market that I have as well. Go to your farmer's market. It's a great place too, if you have one locally, because these people are growing those garlic locally. So they're already kind of acclimated and been growing well in your area. So that's always a good source of garlic as well too, if you need to get one real quick. But yeah, so I was growing those for a long time. And then I've got a viewer on my channel who's been watching my channel since the very beginning. In fact, I'll just mention too, just real quick on the side here, I think Tony or someone mentioned that I'm wearing Praxis 55712 shirt.
Yeah.
And I was a big fan of Ray Browning, and it was because of that channel this viewer started watching my channel. We were kind of after growing those for a couple of years, I've been thinking, I was like, man, I hadn't had a chance to grow a hard neck variety, because there's two different varieties. You got a soft neck, which doesn't create a flower stalk. And then you've got a hard neck variety, which will push up a flower stalk, which will be this nice curly little scape, when you get into late spring, early summer. And then, so they'll produce those. So I hadn't had a chance to grow any garlic stalks or hard necks to get those like scapes and stalks and all of that. So I wanted to grow those, and a friend and viewer of the channel sent me a couple of these really cool German hardneck varieties. And so I grew those for a couple of seasons. And in fact, what we're farming now over at my friend's farm are all of those hardneck varieties that she sent me. She sent me 2 bulbs. And this is the thing about growing garlic too. You really only need a couple of bulbs, get yourself started one year, and then it just exponentially grows each year. I went from 2 bulbs of garlic, and I think we planted somewhere around 250 to 300 cloves of garlic. And this is all maybe within a span of 4 years. Since I've gotten those 2. We've got, and these are cloves, and we picked the biggest cloves out of last year's harvest of probably around 200. So, in the long run, we're looking at possibly even growing 400-500 heads of garlic out of 2 bulbs we got just like 4 years ago.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, it's really great. But I went to that National Heirloom Exposition. Got to go to Baker Creek's thing, and they had a really cool sale there. They sold out of everything, and the very last thing that I was finally able to get to, because I was doing all this filming and I was really busy, I was like, I got to get over there and get something. They had a couple of boxes of garlic left, and it was and the variety was music. And I was like, yes,
There you
I
go.
finally get to grow some music, and got them from Baker Creek right there at the Heirloom Exposition. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, is growing that variety music this
Good.
year,
Yeah,
as well as another kind of like red one. I can't quite remember the name, but I also got another variety as well too. But both hardnecks.
That's nice. I like the hardnecks because they do well in cold regions, but they tend to have bigger clothes and are easier to separate from the bulb. So that's one reason why I like
Yes.
music as a hardneck.
Mhm.
It has beautiful clothes when you harvest it.
Yeah, that is kind of the thing too with like soft neck varieties, is that, and also like if you're looking for your clove seed, for your next season, you get into those bulbs and you might get like maybe 2, 3 nice good sized cloves, but then the rest of them are all these funky little ones all fitting together in weird little ways. And comes the part of like trying to separate them. You got to really like get in there and pull them apart. It isn't really, so I definitely get that. Oh, it looks like we've got Garden State Gardener joining with us there.
Hey,
With a
Joe,
little
nice to see you.
hello. Nice to see you,
I'm
Joe.
actually going to be on Joe's show in a few weeks, and Joe will be on my show in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just on Joe's show what was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was. Yeah. He's a great guy. I really love what he does. And again, too, just one of those great creators out there, just putting out content and encouraging people to grow and bringing together community. He has a really great Sunday evening thing he does with some giveaways and all of that sort of stuff, too. So if you haven't had a chance to go check out Garden State Gardener and Joseph's channel there, go check him out. Go join him. In fact, tomorrow night on his live stream tomorrow night.
And he grows a lot of chili peppers, which could be a nice lead in to talking about Pepper X.
Oh, you knew where I was going too. Exactly. Because that's one of the things too that Joe and I always talk about whenever we're hanging out, because we both really, really love growing peppers. And so I wonder, it's great. I'd love to hear what Joe's got to say about the Pepper X and all of that too. So I'll be looking forward to seeing his show this tomorrow night, because I'm sure he's going to be talking about it as well too. But this week the Pepper X surpassed the world record, surpassing the Carolina Reaper. And the Carolina Reaper was developed by the same guy, so he's really just beating his own record when it comes down to it. But the Pepper X, that's pretty awesome.
It's crazy.
I know you've grown the Reaper, right?
Well, yeah. So, like you mentioned earlier, the Carolina Reaper was about 1.6 million Scoville heat units. And now Pepper X is more than 2.6 million. But because of the way that Guinness determines whether it's hot or not, is they don't take a single pepper. And so it's an average of 2.69 million Scoville units. So reportedly, some of the peppers they tested were over 3 million Scoville heat units to arrive at that average.
Man, yeah, that's the thing too. And I did catch that too when I was listening to the announcement and all of that, that it was an average of that, but 2.69 million. Now here, let's talk about that. And I'm not sure if you know much about the Scoville thing, and this is where I get kind of confused a little bit too. Is that okay? So it's 2.69 million. The last one was probably about 1.6, somewhere in there. I think, I can't remember, 1.6. So I mean, that's a whole point difference. But in the long run, it's not. They say it's 3 times hotter.
So the way that if you look at the history of Scoville and how the Scoville heat units began, it was in the old days, literally 100 years ago, they would take peppers as a scientist, and he would give his test subjects a taste of the pepper, and they would rate how hot it was. And so the baseline is the bell pepper at 0 Scoville heat units. And then what they had to do as the peppers got hotter and hotter is they would dilute the pepper in like a sugar water solution.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so that's how the original scale was determined, was how many dilutions of the heat to arrive at that same baseline where there's no more heat.
Right.
And as peppers got so much hotter,
Mhm.
they began doing that chemically and electronically and running tests,
Yeah.
because there's no one that can taste and at any point when you're talking millions of Scoville heat units and be able to tell you that it's hot or not hot and to what degree it is. And so it's not exactly a linear scale, which is why they can say that it's 3 times hotter. And you compare it to like a Scotch bonnet that I think Rob was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The Carolina Reaper was 5 or 10 times hotter than a Scotch bonnet just because of the range. And so
Yeah.
now you compare that to the Pepper X, and it's just mind-boggling. It becomes mathematical at this point, because really, whether it's 3 times hotter or 4 times hotter or even just twice as hot, that's still just a crazy amount of heat.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, it is a crazy amount of heat. And again, I mentioned earlier too that I got one that was probably around a million, maybe a little
Yeah.
less. And I just had a little tiny sliver. And again, I also mentioned too that you can eat a little tiny sliver, you might as well eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I mean, that
It's
little
going to
tiny
kill your tongue and send you into
you
a coma anyway. So yeah.
yeah, and kick those endorphins in too, and I
Yeah.
thought it was one of the things that was kind of funny about what Ed was talking about in the interview that I listened to earlier this week when he was, announcing the record was, one of his favorite things is to watch people hit that endorphin level where fear starts to take place.
I believe it. I believe it.
They were on that show, Hot Ones, or
Oh yeah.
where they, kinda eat the hot wings and ask questions of all the famous people and all of that, and, they had a couple of guys who were actually there to taste and eat them. So the couple of guys were at and Ed ate them with them, and he's just standing there just like no problem through the whole thing, while these guys, like you said, got that whole, like,
Yeah.
endorphin rush. It's the flight, you know what I mean? There's fight or flight. Flight starts to take place in your mind, like, "I gotta go, I gotta move. This isn't what's happening here?" And you can just see it in everybody's face while he's sitting back like, "Yeah, I've eaten
Yeah.
a lot of these over the years now." So
Well, that's the hardest part. I grew some super hot peppers this year, and I've already harvested some of my devil's brain,
Oh,
which is
yes.
in the 1 to 1.2 million range,
Yep.
and T-Rex yellow, which is in the same general range. And the hardest part is figuring out what you're going to do with them, because like you, I don't want to just eat the pepper. But I made some peach jelly, some pepper jelly,
Ooh.
using devil's brain pepper.
Yeah.
And normally in the past, what I've done when I make my peach pepper jelly is I'll do 3 habaneros. And this
Oh.
time I did 1 of the devil's brain,
Yeah.
and it's about the same. The devil's brain pepper jelly is a little bit spicier than 3 habaneros, but it was bearable as long as you're, putting it into something.
Yeah.
Had a viewer of mine send me some super hot pepper sauce that he made, and I made a pot of chili and put
Yeah.
in 4 drops of his pepper sauce, and it was much hotter than I normally eat my chili. So it's all relative as to what you're going to use it for.
Right, right. Yeah. So yeah, if you're kind of breaking it down, cooking it down, mixing it in with stuff, that's really the way to go with a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. A lot of people make powders and different things like that with them and everything. But the devil's brain was literally one of those first hot peppers that I ever grew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, actually, and the really cool little ripples in it, looks
Yeah.
like I mean, it
Yeah.
kinda got, like, that almost brain texture
Yeah.
to them in a way, so I could see where they get the name from, but, yeah, those are really cool peppers. I had, a friend who, would make honey, like a hot honey. with the
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Man, and I'm telling you what, that stuff's really good too. As long as you only keep it to a certain heat
Yeah.
level. But yeah, definitely. And I think he made some of that out of some of the peppers that I grew too for me as well. So that's a
Nice.
really good idea. And then too, then you can take that honey and those things and also make like some kind of like honey glazed. He was making like honey glazed nuts, like peanuts and stuff. So you got these really like hot peanuts. Really, oh, those are good.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Oh, looks like we got Connie joining with us. Thanks for joining with us again, Connie. It's good to see you there. And let's see here. We got another question coming in from Shandy's good with the questions today. Thank you so much, Shandy. Let's see what we got. Can you overwinter only the root ball of peppers under lights in an unheated garage, or all those just rot?
Yeah. So the key with overwintering anything, whether it's the garlic in the ground or a pepper in a pot, is the moisture level. And so
Yeah.
if it's too wet and cold and stays wet and cold, then yes, the possibility for rot sets in. But generally, when you're going to overwinter those chili and pepper plants, you're going to cut off most of the leaves so they're not actively growing,
Mhm.
and you're going to reduce the watering, because if you keep
Yeah.
watering them, they want to keep growing. So you
Yeah.
kind of need to put them into that stasis mode where they start going dormant in a
Mhm.
cooler spot with less water, with fewer leaves, and then no, they shouldn't rot. If you can avoid excessive moisture levels in that soil, that they'll do just
Mhm.
fine, assuming it's not too cold in the garage. Because if you get the hard freeze and really cold conditions,
Yes.
even in a garage, it'll still kill the plant. So
Yep.
cool, not cold, and moist, not wet, is really
Yeah.
the way to go.
Exactly. And maybe the lights too, maybe not as bright or right up on the lights or
Yeah,
either, right? That sort of
yeah.
thing as well.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about a shed or a garage, even if it's got a window in it. The
Yeah.
light levels in
Mhm.
winter are so low that even if those peppers are getting some light, it's not
Yeah.
enough to stimulate the new growth. Now, if you put
Yeah.
them in your grow room that's getting grow
Yes.
lights for 18 hours a day, then they're going to start growing again because they've got all that light and heat
Yeah,
that's
those are
in
the
your
those are the
house.
stimulants. Those are the
Yeah,
stimulants right there for sure. Yeah, and if so like again too, natural light in the winter, there's less light during the winter, so you're probably getting appropriate. So if you can maybe get those or getting some of that, if you do have windows, if you can get some of that light from it, but not have them too close to the window,
yeah,
just to
yeah,
avoid that cooling. Yes, exactly. That's what I would say too, for sure. But yeah, that's a great idea too, though. I mean, if you got a pepper plant that's really productive and you just don't want it, you don't want it to go and you want to grow it next year and, you know, do those sort of things, get those, keep them over winter, and then you'll
yeah,
be really with a great head start for next year too. Because those
yeah.
things will just go in, and not only that, they'll be bushier,
Absolutely,
might
it's a
even
head
be more
start.
productive.
The plants already established. Pepper plants can grow years if
Yep.
you can just keep them alive over the winter. And then
Yeah.
they've got the thick stem and the root all ready to go, and you'll get faster fruit.
Yep. Yeah, pepper plant is basically a perennial. It's just an annual in colder conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's see here. Jay is asking, or wait, no, he's asking Garden State Gardener. I thought that was Gardener Scott. But anyways, how about real quick here? How do you preserve your huge supply of peppers?
Yeah,
Or your
so
supply of peppers?
I actually have a whole bunch of peppers right now that I'm ready to preserve. I was going to do it last week, but hopefully I'll get to it this week. So last year, my big focus was on fermenting my peppers, my chili peppers, the hot ones specifically, and also making chili powder. So I fermented a whole bunch of my peppers to make a pepper sauce, and I did a video about that. But I also dehydrated and freeze dried a number of my peppers to, like you were talking about, put into a coffee grinder, or I'm sorry, actually, it wasn't you. I just came from my garden club meeting, and the guy there was talking about putting them into a coffee grinder. So drying the peppers, putting them into a coffee grinder, and making a powder to sprinkle. But this week, what I'm planning to do is pickle my peppers. And pickled peppers are different than fermented peppers. And so I'm going to be pickling my jalapeno peppers and pickling my Jimmy Nardello peppers, and I'll be canning them as well so that they're chef stable. So those are the big things. The super hot peppers that I'm still trying to figure out what to do with, I have in the freezer. So between the drying and the fermenting and the freezing and the pickling, that's how I take care of my peppers.
Yeah, excellent. All right. So also too, again, another record too broken this week as well too, which I thought was kind of exciting, and this is one that probably fluctuates a lot more than the peppers do, because again, as I kind of explained a little bit about kind of how peppers have to come to, how they get them to those world records and all of that. But right now, or I guess we're kind of closing out that season where all of these people have been growing giant pumpkins, have been taking all of their pumpkins to all these different weigh-offs all around the country. And one of the biggest weigh-offs in the whole country is down in Half Moon Bay, down in California. And this is where I believe the gentleman's name is Michael, and he's a teacher from Minnesota. Here, I'm gonna put this picture back up. Or did I even have the, I didn't have a picture of the actual pumpkin. Oh no. Uh-oh.
You can see it online. There's articles about it that show it. It's a big pumpkin.
If I could get it on the shared screen.
And technically, a pumpkin is a squash, and most of these super heavy pumpkins are not technically pumpkins. Most of them are squashes that have been bred for the super size. And that's the key. Whether it's the super hot peppers or the super heavy pumpkins, it's all about the genetics. You can't just use a Burpee's pumpkin seed and expect that you're going to use a lot of fertilizer and a lot of water and that it's going to be 2,700 pounds. You really do need specific seed to reach that point, and then give it extra care of the fertilizer and the water and the protection to get it to grow that big.
Yeah.
And Tony mentioning his 17-pound zucchini. Tony does a lot at Simplified Gardening, does a lot of the record-breaking kind of vegetables. And he's got some videos about that on his channel and a lot more information that he doesn't have in his videos. But it's all about the genetics and getting the seeds to be able to get it that big. And you can see with that guy standing right next to it.
Yeah.
That's a big pumpkin.
That is a really big pumpkin. Oh my. Yeah. So, one of the competition categories, again, competition that shall not be named here, but one of the categories last year was to grow a giant squash. Who could grow the biggest squash out of it all? So I reached out to another grower named Cindy Tobeck, who's been testing the limits and trying to get a world record herself. I think as far as, and again too, they are, like you were saying, they're different bred out types of pumpkins, and there's one kind of subcategory of the giant pumpkin area, which is green squash. So so I believe it's one that stays green, doesn't turn any sort of orange or anything like that. So and it's categorized as a squash more so than as a pumpkin. So I don't know if they're, that sort of thing. But I know she was saying that she did get, as far as that subcategory, the largest world record herself too. So I'm really excited about talking to her about that and all those sort of giant pumpkin stuff. What's the biggest squash you've ever grown, or have you ever?
So
just as far as regular, or have you tried to grow a big?
I tried growing, a giant pumpkin, and there's a variety that you can, I think Burpees sells. You can find it pretty readily. It's an Atlantic, like Howard's Atlantic, or I forget the name, but it's
Dill Atlantic.
Oh, it could be dill Atlantic, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I grew some of those seeds and was able to grow 100-pound pumpkin.
Oh, nice.
Well,
Yes.
which is pretty good. I did that at the school garden, and the kids helped out, and we were able to grow 100-pound pumpkin. But that's the only time I got seed that was specifically bred to grow a bigger plant. I've had a zucchini that weighed 10 pounds just because I left it on the plant. And I've had, 30-pound pumpkins because it was a good pumpkin year. But that's the only time I attempted to grow a big one. And I think 100 pounds is respectable.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Atlantic giant. That's what that Tony put it in. There you go. Atlantic giant.
Yeah, Atlantic giant. And I grew the dill Atlantic a couple of years ago in just this little space. And I kind of put it like in my little alleyway that I've got. So as people are walking through, it's like right there and they can see the pumpkin growing and all of that. I grew this dill Atlantic and it ended up being, and I thought it was, when you see the size of it, you're like, oh man, this is going to be big. You're thinking big numbers, and this was a good sized pumpkin, but it was 132 pounds. I was like,
that's good.
All right, 132 pounds. But then here's the test where you know whether or not you've got a giant pumpkin. Try lifting it. Try lifting a 132-pound pumpkin. It literally took me and my daughter both to kind of lift this up onto something so that I can wheel it out to the front of the property. So for Halloween, all the kids could see the big giant pumpkin out front and everything. But man, so that kind of like took me, I was like, okay, I don't know. But then after I tried lifting it, I was like, okay, that's a big pumpkin.
Yeah.
I can't imagine growing one of these big, huge.
Well, like Tony mentioned, it's a huge commitment. They have the pallets laid out in the field, and when the pumpkin is still manageable, they'll put the pumpkin on the pallet.
Yep.
So that as it continues to grow, there's no way you can lift a 2,700-pound pumpkin that's just lying in the field and expect that you're going to be able to keep it in one piece. So the amount of time involved, the amount of commitment, and so 130 pounds, 100 pound is doable for most gardeners. But beyond that, it really is dedicated space, pruning, fertilizing, watering, covering. There's so much involved with getting the huge pumpkins.
Yes, they are.
And squashes and everything else.
Yeah, and just as well as like the pepper community, those giant grower communities, these are really dedicated gardeners into their specific practice, and again, it is really intense. By the time I was getting into growing mine, as far as the seeds of the giant squash I got from Cindy, I was just like, I don't know. This is good. It would take me a few years of practice and learning, and before I'd even probably get close to probably growing something, even maybe in the range of 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it is a lot of work for those things. And again, too, also, these pepper growers are doing those peppers as well, too, Ed had to grow thousands and thousands of plants. They had to, they had to work through different variations and do all sorts of stuff. So there's years of work.
Well, 10 years is basically what Ed says. That's one reason why Carolina Reaper was 10 years ago, because it's a 10-year process of growing it and then stabilizing it and then testing. And it wasn't just, he's got Pepper X that's in the news. He's probably also got a Pepper QRST UVWY and Z that he's doing the same thing with.
25, what is it, 25 different letters possibly, right? But that's what like I said. He's like, I got stuff in my back pocket. We're waiting. It's coming, so, and again, too, that's pretty wild. And again, a lot of work for that sort of stuff. So, really, for when it comes to both of those those guys who broke those records this year, just a huge congratulations. All of the effort and everything you did. It's just really, really awesome for all of us other growers out there to be able to watch and see what you guys do and put those things together, you know. And again, we try to have a little bit of fun with what we can in our gardens and stuff, but really, you know, kudos to all of you out there who can do that sort of stuff, because it's a lot of work. Definitely. So, well, let's, you know, get into it real quick here. How is the year growing for you, Scott? I mean,
it was good. I had a fantastic tomato year, which I did not think I was going to have. We had a extremely cold and wet June, which never happens here. So I didn't even get my tomato and pepper plants in the ground until the 3rd week of June.
Oh, wow.
And normally I'm the 1st week of June, if the forecast looks good, maybe the last week of May. So most of my garden was 3 weeks late, and it was just fantastic. I come back to the soil. This soil that I'm growing in is 3 years old now. 3 years of my amending and getting to the point that it's really producing well. But just a fantastic tomato year. In fact, I've got 4 trays of cherry tomatoes in my freeze dryer right now because I've harvested so many cherry tomatoes before the hard freeze came, and a ton of cucumbers and a ton of peppers. I focused most of my garden on just peppers and tomatoes and cucumbers, and I've got quarts and quarts of pickles and just absolutely fantastic. And that's the outside garden. Inside my greenhouse, this was the first year I was actively growing in my greenhouse. Same thing, just fantastic results with the tomato and the pepper plants that I've got in the greenhouse. So it was a good year. You know, there were some things that didn't work and some new things that I tried, but overall, it was a really good gardening year.
Yeah, same here, you know, and again, too, expectations weren't very high for me at the beginning of the season. I got a very late start, just like yourself. You know, it was just based on certain situations that I was dealing with here as far as being able to grow in the property through the season, whether or not that was going to be able to happen. So I kind of held off a little bit, you know, and that was kind of my reasoning for that. And so, you know, I was like, okay, we'll just throw things out there, see what happens. You know, we're not going to really have any big expectations on anything. You know, there were a couple of things that maybe didn't do too well. Tomatoes at first, big worry. Again, a lot of heat here. So again, you know, at first, it's just the same situation I've dealt with over the last couple of seasons. You know, lots of dropped flowers, dropped fruits when the heat started climbing up there. And so I was like, oh no. But man, when it started cooling down at the end of summer, man, all those plants just started taking off. I've got tomatoes all over the place. And for me, I'll have maybe another week or so before I can really have to start worrying about taking everything off the plant here. So we're getting a little bit of an extra opportunity for them to ripen on the plant. So I've got some in the back porch, this plant that's just putting them off all over the place. So maybe I didn't get the tomatoes where I wanted them during the earlier part of the summer and all of that, but I'm getting them now. So, you know, in the long run, you know, it ended up being really, really well. So without much expectations, thinking, oh, it's going to be
always good.
So year, it ended up being a really good year.
Yeah, it's easy to start with low expectations when you're a gardener, because
you should do it anyways, right?
Because if they hit, I mean, if you start off the season thinking it's not going to go that well and it doesn't go well, then you're happy because you predicted it. But then if it's better than you expected, oh, it's a golden year, and you can remember it forever.
Yeah, one of the big things though too, and I talked about this a few weeks back when I finally got to harvest one of my watermelons, which is actually a surprise. I've been watching my watermelon plants and I hadn't seen much, and 2 different plants in 2 different areas, growing vines all over, but I'm looking just as I'm passing through, I'm not seeing anything. And then I walked by one day and I'm like, and I looked back behind something for some reason and lifted it up, and there's this big old watermelon sitting back there, just hiding away from everything. And I was like, awesome. And then even better, you know, it had all the signs that it was ripe and everything. So I pulled it off and then cut it open, and it was so delicious. It was so good. And I haven't had a great watermelon like that in a few years out of my garden. So that, I think just that one thing right there made the whole gardening year worth it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was
Oh,
a
absolutely.
success just because I got that one delicious watermelon because I love melons so much.
Yep.
Are you able to grow melons much up there?
Yes and no. We have to be really selective in the varieties. And so Moon and Stars is a little one. The Minnesota Midget is another melon. So the
Yeah.
only melons that I've had any success with are the really small ones because my season is just so short. I can't grow the big ones. And
Yeah.
it's mixed. Some years are good, some years are bad. They don't have that wonderful delicious watermelon flavor that you are used to when you can get that farm stand melon, but they're good. And so
Yeah.
I don't do it often just because the results are average. So I use the space most of the time for other plants.
Okay. All right. All right. There's a question here too. So I want to make sure we're hitting our questions here. Heather asks, what do I plant the peppers into over winter?
And so a pot with potting soil, basically. It's as simple
Yeah.
as that. You don't really need to do anything like a special mix or special blend. It should be big enough for the roots. If you're digging it out of the ground and you put it into the pot,
Hmm.
trimming the roots a little bit is okay. That helps also put it into that dormancy. But just a pot with potting soil, I think, is what almost everybody does when they're
Yeah.
overwintering.
Yeah. And I think, for me anyways, I would say that the key in that situation is, yeah, definitely potting soil, just as you would for most plants and all of that, just kind of making it an indoor plant now pretty
Hmm.
much. But big thing is if you're pulling this plant from outdoors and bringing it inside, is you're wanting to pull this out, and I wash my roots
Yeah,
completely. We cut it back, I wash that plant down, I'm
yeah,
making sure that it's clean. And not only that, uh, as mentioned earlier too, keeping it out in the garage is a good idea in that sort of sense. I've got a lot of house plants here, and if I'm going to be bringing a plant indoors into this space where I've got all of my plants, I'm going to really want to make sure I'm keeping most all of those pests from
yeah.
outdoors and those soil pests and all those sort of things that could be, become a problem for the rest of my plants. I want to keep those kind of away. So I will keep them
That's a
maybe
great
in
idea.
because I don't have a garage space, so I have a second room. So I will go and take those into a
Yeah,
second room, and again, utilizing the window and all that sort of stuff. I have a table, I'll put it up, go get the window light. It's in a separate room away from all of my other house plants and all the other types of things that I'm growing indoors, because those outdoor plants will carry things. So yeah,
absolutely.
that's the only thing I'd really, really be concerned with when it comes to transferring your outdoor plants
Yeah, that's
to.
a good point. You're not just digging it up and putting it in a pot and bringing it inside. There's
Mhm.
there's that extra care of trimming off the leaves and the branches, and like I
Yep.
said, trimming off the roots because some of those roots are going to be really long, and if you try to put it into a pot, they're going to just wrap around the inside of the pot. So,
Yeah.
cleaning the roots, the stem, the leaves, and if you don't, you run the risk of bringing in pests to your
Mhm.
houseplants.
And I've done it before. Believe me,
Yeah.
I've done it before.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
learned I've
I
learned
think
my
most
lesson.
of us have. Yeah.
And also, Tony also mentions too, again, drainage, your soil definitely, because you're also overwintering something. You're as you mentioned, Scott, also earlier, we're not wanting to water very much. We're
Yeah.
wanting to lower that watering down. And so you're going to want a really good draining soil. So when you do water, it's not going to soak, it's not going to hold
Yeah.
on to the water for, periods of time, and it's sitting in water. It's not actually really
Yeah.
going
Good
to be.
point. I make my own potting mixes. And so when I do something like the overwintering, I'm using a mix that's got more perlite in it. So that does have little extra drainage.
All right. And what does he say? I would never bring something from outside to where my house plants are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And emphasize the word never. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you, Tony, for sure.
Tony does
I
a lot
learned
more.
that lesson.
He does a lot more house plants than some of us do. He's got beautiful
Yeah.
house plants. I
Oh, in fact, he's
I
got
don't
a
have so many house plants. You've got all your house plants behind you, Enoch. And I when I bring plants from outside in, I do a good wash, but I'm moving them, like you said, to a separate area, a
Quarantine,
second room, someplace where they're not going to.
Mhm.
I had the scale, which is like an
Oh,
aphid with armor on it.
yes.
And I ran into that at the school with my citrus trees. I had a Meyer lemon that got scale. And the only way it could have happened is because of some of the garden plants that I brought into the classroom
Yeah.
that infected the citrus trees specifically.
Oh man, see, and that was my mistake. I had a
Mhm.
citrus tree I was trying to grow several years back, and I was like, oh, well, it's got to come inside during the cold, you know. So I brought that sucker right in, sat it just right across over here, and oh, I'm telling you, it wasn't just scale; it was spider mites.
Yeah.
It. Oh man, aphids, I invited every evil little critter into my house that year, and it just
Yeah.
devastated things. In fact, my pothos got really hit that year really hard, and I had to cut it back so much. And that, oh my god, there's nothing worse than
That's
having to like,
painful.
uh,
It's
oh
hard to
man,
do.
20 feet of growth, and you got to cut that off because you just got to get it out of the house.
Yep.
Oh, these are horrible things. Don't do it.
Yep. But most gardeners end up doing it so that they learn from it and then
That's what
learn
we
that they're
do.
not supposed to do it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So hopefully you're catching some advice
That's
beforehand,
right.
but if you're just learning and doing things, and that's part of the whole thing of gardening though, is that we just learn, and part of all of that is learning from some of these kind of big mistakes and seeing
Yeah.
some pretty kind of devastating things happening. But as I always say though to everybody, is I kill more plants than I succeed with,
Oh,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So
I've I've
don't beat
I've been
yourself up
gardening
to that.
so long and teaching gardening for so long. I say I've killed more plants than most gardeners grow in their lifetime.
Yeah. in their in their lifetime even,
Yeah,
right?
I've killed thousands and thousands and thousands of plants,
Yes.
mostly on purpose. But
Mhm.
but yeah, the more you grow, the more you kill. That's just part of gardening.
Yeah. So get out there, go kill some plants, learn
That's right.
something. What a great message, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
there
it's
was
the
one
truth. That's how
year
we learn. That's how we
at
learn.
in the greenhouse at the Galileo School, I was teaching the kids how to grow carrots and sowing the seeds. And so over the course of one day in particular, I think I had 3 classes of students coming in, and I was using the same bed to show them how to sow the seeds and then giving them some seeds to sow. And didn't do the math, didn't think too much about it, assumed that 11 and 12-year-old kids would actually have the the willingness to sow the seeds the way that they were shown how to do it,
Yeah.
and probably had 20 seed packets, carrot seeds, and there were no seeds left at the end of the day. And each seed packet has got
Yeah.
100 or
Oh,
200 seeds
yeah.
in it. And so in this long bed in the greenhouse were thousands and thousands of carrot seedlings that ended up growing. And we spent days just
Yeah.
thinning out the carrots. So when I say,
Well,
I've killed thousands of plants, that one year in that one bed, I
yeah.
personally probably pulled about 1,500 to 2,000 carrot plants trying to get them under control.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, they get so close together, they're not gonna grow very well, so, yeah, you wanna thin them out, and that is another when you start, it's a hard thing to start doing for a new
Yeah.
gardener too as well, is that when you start growing things and you have to start learning thinning things out, because nobody
And that's
wants to purposely go in and just yank
you're
something
killing
and kill
plants.
something.
Nobody wants to kill a plant, but you got to do it.
No, you gotta do it. You definitely gotta do it. All right. So what do you got planned on for this fall, or anything going for this next season or anything that you're thinking
So
about?
I use the fall as a construction time. So I've
Yeah.
been working on some pathways and adding some new beds, filling the beds with soil, amending the beds that I already have. And so I don't, at least this year, I didn't do a fall garden because I knew I was going to be doing some of these construction projects. In the past, I've grown more fall crops, but as long as the weather's good, I'm going to be out there doing literally physical labor to get the garden space built out. I'm on a 5-year plan, and next year is year 5. So I still have a lot of building that I have planned for my garden space, so that when spring comes, then I can really start focusing in the 5th year on adding some specific plants into some of those beds that are still being built, and getting the garden growing the way I want
Yeah.
it to. But as you know, a big part of growing is that foundation. You've got to
Yep.
have your bed, you've got to have the soil prepared, you've got to have everything in place before the seed comes into play. And
Mhm.
that's really what my focus is for this next season.
Yeah, yeah. And also this last season too, you started growing and utilizing a greenhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I will be doing a little bit of that. It's kind of an experiment. So I'll be having a video come out soon where I'll be talking about the water that I have in my greenhouse to help retain the heat, and it's working extremely well. Even with
Awesome.
these nights that are getting down to freezing and below freezing, the inside of my greenhouse has not dropped below 43 degrees Fahrenheit. And so when it's 25 degrees outside and 43 degrees in the greenhouse, that's just elevated my ability to grow plants in it. So I have ripped out, cut most of the tomato plant that I had growing in there. I'm
Yeah.
leaving a little bit of it just to see at what point it begins to suffer from the outside cold. But I will be putting in some spinach and lettuce and beets and
Yeah,
some
yeah.
things like that in the greenhouse, just to see how well I can overwinter some of those plants.
Yeah, you just mentioned something there too, as I was thinking as we were talking about killing plants, we also torture them as well too,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we got, you got to find out how this thing grows. Is it going to last a while,
that's right.
But
Well, I know it has a pretty extensive root system because it was 10 feet tall in my greenhouse. And so I've cut it back. And so it's a much smaller plant that's being supported by a bigger root system. And so that's also part of the test, is the assumption that because it's a stronger plant, it'll be able to handle some of that stress that I'm
yeah,
intentionally
exactly.
inflicting.
Oh my, oh my. What do plants think of us gardeners, right?
Right.
But you know what? It is all a part of the fun and experience and the education and learning and all that sort of stuff that we do in order to become better gardeners and to grow all those sort of
Yeah.
things as well
And it's
too.
fun.
Yes, and it's fun. It's totally fun. And also having a chance to get you here on the Let's Get Growing show and talk to you all about gardening and all this sort of great stuff is fun as well, Scott. It's
Oh,
really so
absolutely.
awesome to have you here with us again this year on our show. And hopefully we'll get to see you again here in upcoming shows as we move into next season with Let's Get Growing and all of that. But again, man, I just, I really, really want to thank you again for joining
My
with us
pleasure.
today and being here and talking all about all the fun that we had this year and those world records.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Enoch. I appreciate being on the show again. And when we start actively growing again, those of us in cold regions, I look forward to seeing you again. We can chat about some of that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Again, we'll catch you later on another show, Scott. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care, buddy.
Hey, gardeners. Thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. All right. What a great, awesome conversation with our friend Gardner Scott there at the Gardner Scott channel. And again, if you haven't had a chance to check out his channel, go down in the link below. Every early Monday morning, he gets up and does a live stream of his own where you can get all of your gardening questions answered with him too as well. So again, thanks again to Gardner Scott for joining with us here on our show again too. So we are winding down, and next week on the Let's Get Growing show, we're going to have our good friend um, uh, Mark Boucher Colbert, who was doing our In the Garden segment at the beginning of this season. He's going to be joining with us to talk all about a cool garden design deck that he's been working on and is finally launching here real soon. And I'm excited to talk to him about this. This has been a project of his that he's just been, been waiting to get out to the public. So I'm kind of really excited to have him on and talk with him again, too, all about our growing season. We'll answer some garden questions, but then we'll also introduce you to his really awesome garden design deck. So be sure to come and tune in with us again this next Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the Let's Get Growing show. And if you're here too still, again, be sure, hit that like button, hit the thumbs up, give us a big thumbs up for Gardner Scott, our great guest today, and also subscribe to our channel and share with all of your friends and let them know that we got this really great show and we're getting to talk with some really awesome gardeners and getting some really good insights into the gardening experience. So be sure to come back again, like I said, next week to check out Mark. Also check out our website at letsgetgrowing.live. And also, again, too, one of the best ways you can support our show is to support our sponsor, Ivy Organics. Ivy Organics got a lot of great products, some good fertilizer in their 301 plant guard. Go check them out at ivyorganics.com and use our promo code GROW10, GROW 10 to get 10% off in their store. And I also want to mention to everybody, we do have a Facebook group for the Let's Get Growing community. And there's a link right down below in the description for you to go check that out. And if you haven't come to join our group, I really encourage you to come join our group and join with all of the other gardeners in our gardening community. Share with us your gardens, or if you're a new gardener, come and ask some questions. We've got gardeners who would love to help you out with anything that you're dealing with in your garden. So definitely come and join our Facebook group. We'd love to see you. And it's also one of the best ways I can see your gardens too, because you guys get to see everything here on our channel. And I get to show you all of that through all of our videos and our different things like that though. But our Facebook group is one of the best ways that you can share your gardens with me. I'd love to see them. I'd love to see your garden spaces. So be sure to do that. All right. So again, just another really great week here on the Let's Get Growing show. And I want to thank you all for joining with us, asking all those wonderful questions as well too. That's one of the great things that makes this show so fun, is that we get to participate with all of you and answer questions and get you involved with our conversation and all of that. So just, again, really, really great week. And so from all of us here, let's get growing. You have a great week, and we'll see you next Saturday.